All right, so this is video 2 for Unit 11. This is looking at social influence, and this is the first part. So last video that you looked at talked about social thinking and how we think about things. This is really looking at social influence and how others can influence us. So the two big topics we're going to talk about are conformity and obedience. So the first one is conformity. Conformity is a behavior intended to match that of the majority. One may adjust your behavior or your thinking towards some group standard. So here you have the picture of if everything is white, the person might conform and change their color to white. So there have been experiments done on conformity, and what they found was behavior is often contagious. What they found was people gazing up, caused others to stop and gaze up. When one laughs, others were found laughing. The chameleon effect is we often unconsciously mimic others' expressions, postures, and voice tones, even without us recognizing that we do it. Mood linkage also occurs where we begin to mimic others' moods. So, one experiment you did some reading on was the Asch experiment on conformity. His study took place in 1951, and he gave individuals a line judge or a visual perception test. And what he found was in this study, there were Confederates that were part of the study and one person who was a participant. And the participant didn't know that the Confederates were kind of role playing in this experiment. And what they found was the individual who was the participant often conformed to what the others thought, even if it was wrong. The ethical study offered deception because it did deceive the participant, and people question if it minimized discomfort because it felt that maybe it put the individual who is the participant in an uncomfortable setting. Two things that they found through this study is there's two reasons that people conformed that they basically stated of why they conformed. Normative influence and informational influence. So normative influence is influencing resulting from a person's desire to gain approval or avoid disapproval. So people wanted to fit into the group, so they take the other's ideas. So you don't want to be seen as potentially different, so you want to fit in, so you conform. The other one is informational influence, influencing resulting from one's willingness to accept others' opinions about reality to be right. So you want to be right with the information, you want to be correct. And so you must not know something about the information. So you want to be right in terms of answering the correct way. So you do it because you want to be right. Not so much that you want to fit in, but you want to have the right information. And that's informational influence. So when does conformity increase? They found that you're more likely to conform when you feel incompetent or insecure. You're in a group of 3 or more. So 3 other people are doing it, so you choose to do it. You are impressed by the status of the group. You have made no prior commitments to a response prior to this. You are being observed by others so that you feel the pressure, and your culture strongly encourages respect for the social standards, so you want to fit in with the norms. So that was conformity. Taking a look at obedience. Obedience in human behavior, it is a form of social influence in which a person yields to instructions or orders from authority figures. So how far would you go to listen to an authority figure? What if you were told to do something wrong and you knew it was wrong? Would you still do it? So Stanley Milgram set up an experiment to explore how often we are obedient to others. Stanley Milgram was a student of Asch, and he knew that people complied with social pressures and conformed. So he set up an experiment. Again, this is something that you researched on your own, where there was an individual who was a teacher and a participant, and they were randomly selected as the participant thought. The teacher was actually a Confederate, so he was aware of what was taking place. The teacher was the participant, and the learner was the Confederate. There was an authority figure that was the person also running the experiment that overlooked it. And there were 40 males between the ages of 20 to 50, and they were paid $4.50 a day. There was a participant who was the teacher, and they were supposed to give electric shock to the learner if they got it wrong. And the authority figure overlooked the experiment. And with this, they found that people often were obedient and listened to their authority figure, even if it was giving electric shocks to others. The ethics that were broke was freedom to withdraw. They didn't really allow individuals and the participant to withdraw, minimizing discomfort because it did give them psychological stress, and they did lie to them, so deception was needed. The last experiment I believe I talked about in the last video, but it talked a little bit about roles and the roles that we could take because of a group influence. So you have social roles, which is your position held by your group, and you have social norms, and these are the group's expectations regarding what is appropriate and acceptable for its members' attitudes and behaviors in a given situation. So I have several roles. I am a teacher, I am a sister, and I have been a student, and I have different norms for each one of those. So the prison experiment really explored social roles. Phillips and Bardo wanted to understand if roles can impact your behavior. So he assigned randomly people to prisoners and guards. And what he found was people often take on their roles in certain situations. There were a lot of ethics that were, again, broken in this experiment. Freedom to withdraw and minimizing discomfort were two. Again, this is another experiment that you researched on your own.